Welcome, everybody. This is Tuesday Morning Grind, episode number 39. Today we have Justin Nassiri. Justin is a Stanford MBA, Naval Academy grad, former nuclear submarine officer, which is going to be fun to talk about, and now the CEO of Captivate that helps even Risk 360 with some of our social media stuff, making these videos, chopping them up into clips, and doing all that fun stuff. So we'll talk about that too. Justin, welcome.
Thanks so much for having me.
So background, like nuclear sub officer, Naval Academy grad, Stanford MBA. Those are some pretty impressive credentials. Now you have your own podcast and you're posting on social media. So how do you go from nuclear sub officer to doing what you're doing and being an entrepreneur today?
I guess, man, I'm 10 years out. So let me try and sometimes you cache your answers to questions. I want to clear the cache and maybe consider this afresh. I was on submarines. I loved the leadership aspect. I loved what I was doing. I wasn't married at the time. I wouldn't actually get married for another 10 years. And I just knew I didn't want to have that family life on subs. So there's a lot of, it's kind of like an iron curtain when you're in the military. You don't really have a lot of sense of what other people in the world do. And so I was just like, probably has something to do with business. Let me go to business school. And it was really an eye-opening experience for me to go to business school because I had never really known about investment banking, private equity, all of the different career paths that were now open to me, I was learning about for the first time. And I like to say I was the opposite of every Stanford MBA. I wrote my application saying, hey, I want to go into this thing called consulting. I want to learn about business. And I went into entrepreneurship instead. And, the joke was that most of my classmates talked about entrepreneurship and went into consulting instead. But Stanford was great for me. It gave me exposure to what was out there, but most notably entrepreneurship. And, long story short, I ended up starting a company straight out of Stanford, which I never thought I would do. And that occupied the next 8 years of my life, making a ton of mistakes and learning a lot, but ultimately falling in love with what Christian and I both do, which is take an idea and bring it to life through a lot of hard work and smart people.
Yep. So you started a business straight out of college, straight out of your MBA at least, and then eventually that became Captivate. Talk about how did you come up with this whole idea? And we'll talk about what Captivate is first for those who don't know, and then talk about how you came up with that idea.
Yeah. Let me actually answer Captivate in a second. Let me give you the story. So my first company was actually called Storybox. I raised $3 million from Google's chairman, Eric Schmidt. And the first company was all about social media marketing. And we were taking photos from Instagram. We were taking videos. We were helping companies publish that content on their website. And one of the things that I took away from that eight-year-long experience was a tremendous amount of empathy for anyone who does marketing. Because what I observed, and we worked with 35 different Fortune 500 companies, a lot of small companies. One of the things that I observed was that these poor marketers have to be active on 4, 5, 6, 7 different social channels. They need to have really high quality content. They have to do it every day. And that is a lot of work. And so that was one insight that stuck with me. Towards the end of my time at Storybox, for fun, I started a podcast called Beyond the Uniform. And the goal was to solve the pain point I had, which was in the military, I had no idea what I was going to do when I got out. So I just started podcasting, interviewing different veterans and learning about their career. And in doing so, helping a lot of veterans figure out what they wanted to do after their service. So when Captivate, the idea for it came along, it was so great because it was a blending of what I learned with Storybox with what I learned from Beyond the Uniform. And essentially, it was the realization that podcasts are such an efficient way to produce content for social media and all of your channels. What I started to realize is that if I work with a company, if they give me basically 2 hours a week in the form of a podcast interview, I can take 2 hours and turn it into a month of social media content, blog posts, Medium posts, Instagram videos, YouTube, LinkedIn posts. We could blow it all out. And we could do it with industries that are really technical, like Risk 360. It's not a simple industry that they're in. We work with biotech companies where it's very complex. But one of the beauties of a podcast format is that you can interview subject matter experts and then use that as the jumping off point for other content. So that's the long answer to what we do and where it came from. But I like to share that for anyone who's listening, who's an entrepreneur, to realize that it is kind of, your experience can be cumulative, and one venture can lead to the other, even though I had no idea that what I was doing with Storybox or Beyond the Uniform would give birth to Captivate.
So back in the Storybox days, did you start that off as a bootstrap company, or did you intend to seek investment? And how in the heck did you meet the Google CEO and get funding there?
So, the full story, I wish we had a beer between us right now for the full story, but I, out of business school, I made good on my essays. I signed with a consulting company called McKinsey. I was going to go work in their New York office, but this was right in 2009 when the economy tanked. So I had between June when I graduated and February of the next year before I started with McKinsey. So I just started toying with the idea that would become Storybox. And McKinsey had given me a $30,000 signing bonus, and I was living off of that bonus and bootstrapping Storybox for the time being. And I got to the point where I was just in love with entrepreneurship. There wasn't really an idea yet, but I was just so in love with this thought of like, man, I can create something that solves a problem. Like, it was just so addicting. And so I went to McKinsey and I'm like, hey guys, I am so grateful for the offer. Whether I'm broke and I join another startup or whatever else, I have to see this through. I know that this is a better fit for me. And they were very gracious, but they were like, hey, you got to pay us back 30 grand like next week. So I borrowed money from my dad to pay them back. And 2 weeks later, maybe 3 weeks later, I got the first round of funding, which was $350,000. And that was from a classmate of mine, Dror Berman. He was unbeknownst to me, he had just started working with Google chairman Eric Schmidt, starting a new fund that would become known as Innovation Endeavors. And he sent me a note just to hang out, and I was just catching up with him. And he's like, no. I actually wanted to hear about your business. Like, I care about you. I want to hear about your life, but this is all about what you're doing with at the time was called Video Genie. And that rapidly led to my first round. But I'm grateful that I kind of made a bet on entrepreneurship when I really did not think it was going to work out. I didn't think it was going to lead anywhere. And I'm grateful for that, because there was many low points on my journey with Storybox, but it wasn't like I had bet on it because I thought I was going to be rich. It was just something I loved doing. And I feel like that love and passion sustained me through some of the lower points when it was just, so isolating and feeling like a failure.
Yeah, that's one of the secrets of entrepreneurship is grinding through the bad times.
Yeah. I feel like that's probably the secret of marriage and many things as well, is just being able to make your way through the low points and keep things going when there's not the love and the high of the good times.
Yeah, I feel like people talk about this a lot, but you see social media and those are the highlights, the Christmas party and all that stuff. What they don't see is founders thinking about how they're going to make payroll or about to lose an important client and trying to keep that client and all those kind of things. So with Captivate now, talk about how big's the team? Are you bootstrapping it? Do you have funding now? What's the business model now?
So it's funny because at least in this moment, it feels like at times like Captivate is the reaction to everything at Storybox, because everything is different. So we are completely bootstrapped, and not even bootstrapped, but my initial investment was $5,000. I was like, I'm not spending 30 grand again starting a company. So one of the reasons for that first distinction, and again, I share this for anyone listening who aspires to entrepreneurship, I found as I did the postmortem on my time at Storybox that every time I raised money, I just, as a human being, the way that I'm wired, I was an awful operator when I had money. Because when I had money, I could listen to my investors chirping in my ear, talking about, why we should be a VR, virtual reality company or whatever crazy idea they had. I didn't have to listen to my customers. Whereas I found that when I, as an entrepreneur, am bootstrapped, I have to be so closely listening to every customer. I have to be building products that they care about. I don't have the extra time or money to just do a Hail Mary on, I think this will work. I have to really vet ideas. I have to be really a good steward of my capital. And for whatever reason, I don't think that applies to me when I raise, millions of dollars. Then I can be a little bit sloppier. So what I appreciate about being bootstrapped is I have to be laser focused on what matters most. And it's very helpful for where the company's at right now. There are 23 people that work at Captivate, and every single one of them is a contractor. They're not a full-time employee. And again, this was, I'm a big advocate of coaching, executive coaching. One of the things that I learned in Storybox through an executive coach was that I don't really view myself as a great manager. So, and I just want to give context, a little bit deeper dive for listeners. I was in the Navy, which is all about leadership. All of my application answers for Stanford were about being a leader. You try and find a way to differentiate at business school. I was the guy who had led 200 people. Like, I was a leader. I fundraised about being a good leader. And years into my experience at Storybox, I started to realize it wasn't true. And I started to realize that there are very few people that I've ever met who are gifted managers. They are able to have difficult conversations, and they are able to somehow get 10 to 20% more out of every diverse team member they work with. And it's just not my skill set. So as I started Captivate, again, just like bootstrapping, I wanted to play to my strengths. And so what I found is like, look, as an entrepreneur, I want to build a system and a technology. And if I do that effectively, just like the military, every person is replaceable. Every person in a crisis can be replaced with someone else. And that avoids for me the dilemma that I'm not a great manager. And so I have built a company around contractors and processes and quality controls, because I know that if someone doesn't work out, not bad on them, not bad on me, but I just need to get someone else in there, and I need to do it in a way that doesn't disrupt my workflow. So all of this, one last thing I'll say, because I know this is long-winded, is that's where it is today. You talk to me when we meet our next revenue milestone, I am open to raising money, and I'm open to bringing on full-time employees. But if I do either of those things, it's going to be explicit with our fundraisers to say, look, I'm not going to manage people. We need either a COO, or I've got no ego. I'll step aside as CEO. I'll be chief content officer or chief marketer, but you got to find someone who is really good at managing people. And that is really tough to do, because there's very few people I know that can do that, but I at least have the honesty to know that's not me.
Yeah, for sure. So you touched on something that I think is incredibly important, and one of the advantages of being a bootstrap business, and that is being attached or being forced out of necessity to be attached to the business problems of your customer. So like me, as a co-founder at Risk 360, I'm still delivering work, but I was heavily delivering work for the first 3 or 4 years, which meant I had my ear to the ground in terms of every whim the customer might want, what's going well, what's going not, where are the market opportunities. And I was able to quickly pivot and capture new revenue streams, if you will, or new business opportunities, stand up new service lines. And there's no way I could have done that if I was purely CEOing the business. And there's probably advantages of purely CEOing a business. I would say you're kind of similar on that front, in that one of your delivery mechanisms for those folks listening that don't work with you, is we do a call every week on the content production, talk about podcasts and everything. And you listen really well. Like, I can always tell you're listening for how you should develop something new for the Captivate app, how we can adjust content creation. Talk about those. I was surprised to hear when we first engaged that you were going to be on every single meeting. I thought that would quickly be delegated to someone else, and I was okay with that. But over time, I've come to see you using that as customer discovery. Can you talk about that? How are you using those types of meetings, and what are you doing to kind of evolve the product and the service offering?
Yeah, let me share a quick story because I feel like some of our best decisions come from our worst mistakes. And when I was at Storybox, we were originally called Video Genie. It was all about video testimonials. And just like today, I see a similar trend. Back in 2009, 2010, every investor was talking about video as the next big wave. And I would sit in on a lot of client calls, and we would hear consistently companies, our clients saying, hey, we really want to do stuff with photos. Hey, we really want to do stuff with Instagram. And I repeatedly said, you know what? Video Genie is our name. We're all about video. Video is the next big thing. Video matters more than photos. We're not going to do that. And meanwhile, a company called Olapic comes along. They hear the same feedback. They build a photo and Instagram centric platform years after we started, and they got bought for $130 million, which was not my outcome. And one of the things I took away from that is you have to love your customer more than your product. You have to be willing to listen to them and what they want. And I want to add a counterpoint to that, because my other favorite phrase is attributed to Henry Ford. And he says, if I listened to my customers, I would have built a faster horse. So I don't want to overly simplify this and say, hey, entrepreneurship is easy. You just have to listen to what your customers say and do that. Like, you do have to balance what they're saying versus what you need to deliver. But one of the reasons why I still sit on every enterprise customer's calls, and I still sit on almost every single sales call, is that it's such powerful feedback. And you know, I listened to a book by Trevor Noah, the comedian who runs The Daily Show. He talks about how stand-up is the ultimate learning tool, because you get immediate feedback every night that is unbiased. You are either funny or you're not, and you can trust that feedback. I feel the same with these customer calls and sales calls. You're just getting direct, unadulterated responses to what's working and what's not. So, you know, to get more to your question, I really, you know, I'm a huge note taker. I use Evernote, and on whether it's a sales call or a customer call, I'm almost typing continuously, because any word that our customer or potential customer uses is so helpful. Our website copy gets written from the specific phrases they use. And in particular, I love on sales calls when someone stops me and they're like, oh, so Captivate essentially does ... Like, whatever they write down or say, I always write down, because it's so gold to hear them express my value proposition in their own words. A lot of what we're trying to figure out still is, how do we support our clients, giving them the analytics and the content that they need. And I don't think we've got the code cracked. You know, we're in the same right ballpark, but we're still figuring out exactly what to do to like really deliver value at scale. And so, you know, these weekly calls and the daily sales calls, it's just trying to be curious. I'm trying to let go of what I think the answer should be. And I'm trying to just be receptive to like what is honestly working and what's not working, so that we can find a better solution to solve the deeper pain point.
Absolutely. So you're obviously an expert in social media, and I'm always trying to crack the puzzle myself. And I have, because we talk every week, I have some inclination of where you stand on this. But where are the what are the big platforms that are bang for buck for businesses right now? Because you have LinkedIn for business, you have TikTok, people are talking about Twitter. What are you seeing in terms of trends?
B2B or B2C alike, I feel like LinkedIn has a lot of value. And I think that it's distinct from every other platform, and that it just has more of a professional angle. And you can still talk about personal stuff there. So I'm a huge advocate of LinkedIn, and I think that there's so much room on that platform. And I feel like the quality of content can be very high there. So regardless of your business, I feel like LinkedIn should be part of your portfolio. My sense mostly from our clients is that Facebook is kind of checking a box, but there's no real value unless you put ads behind it. YouTube is the long play for SEO. And I feel like every company should be investing in YouTube, even if it doesn't yield results for a year. That's like kind of the compound interest from investment is YouTube. There's a lot of value there, but you won't see it overnight. There are few of our clients who are on TikTok, and the reason why they like it is it seems like you can get a lot of traction right now with okay content. Like you get a lot of eyeballs. I'm a little bit skeptical. I think that they inflate their numbers. I think that, I just hear people saying like, oh, I got 1,000 views. And like, what does that translate to? But I would view TikTok as a nice prospective bet for a company. If they're able to easily create content, you might be able to grow an audience quickly because it's so much younger than other platforms. You get these situations where the early adopters kind of make inroads and get a beachhead before anyone else. So sure, try that if you have room. And then Instagram is a little bit more defined. We see that Instagram Reels in particular, you get a disproportionate return on investment. And so we encourage companies of any type to invest in Instagram. Those are the big ones. Clubhouse, no one I've seen has found a good way to track that and crack that. Medium, I think, is really interesting if you can convert your content into text form. Blog posts or blog posts. Those are the ones that we're seeing mostly. And then podcasts are just nice because you kind of own that audience, you own that relationship. But obviously that takes a little bit more of an investment to prop up.
Yeah, one of the things, like I guess the angel and the demon talking to me on my shoulder, giving me my doubts sometimes is I always question, let me back up. So one of the reasons that we invested in content development is because we said, hey, look, at the end of the day, this is a way that we can out-teach the competition. We can just give content for free, give something useful back to the audience. If they want it, great. If they don't want it, they don't have to listen to it. But we're just trying to give stuff away, add value. So that's how that was our pep talk to talk ourselves into doing this. Yeah. Then the second question I kind of had was, how good does the content have to be to add value and not detract from the mission, Because at a certain point, if you're a professional organization and you're putting out really subpar content, maybe it could actually hurt you. What's your sense? Like, how accepting is the audience? How good does the content have to be to add value to an organization? Or is it just important to get out there?
I think that is the worst thing today is that you have to be publishing frequently. And I feel like consumer expectation for quality of content is at an all-time high. I think that's partly, living in a Game of Thrones age where you get unbelievable, quality content on demand. Like you have to be good enough to slice through the noise. What I would say, one of the reasons that I favor quantity is not because the quality can be garbage. Garbage quality content won't make a difference. What I like about quantity is it's increased data points. You're able to put more out there and get a sense of the topics and the languaging that tends to get traction. So if you are posting daily on LinkedIn, over the course of a month, you're going to have a lot of data points about the type of content people are responding to, the questions that they're wanting answered. And that can guide then a deeper investment in a really high quality piece of content that goes deeper on that. So I don't think it's an either or, but I do see a lot of marketers and revenue teams. It almost feels like they're buying lottery tickets. They're going to do a deep dive and create a white paper on a topic, but I don't really see any justification of why they're choosing that topic. And so I'm just saying, do it as a 1-2 combination. Produce a lot, see what's working, and then double click on the ones that are working. It's kind of removing the guesswork for the higher quality content that still plays a role.
Yeah. I also think you just got to get reps in. I think I had a little bit of an illusion, but I was tempered in my expectations that this would be easier than it is in terms of everybody knows who Joe Rogan is or some of these really famous podcasters. And he's also a professional stand-up comedian with 30 plus years of experience. And they make it look so easy.
Yep.
So getting up here, prepping for these meetings, scheduling the meetings takes a lot of work, but the more you do it, the more natural it becomes. And I think there's a certain amount of, you just got to be okay with it being kind of crappy up front, and then it'll get
for
better.
Sure. And I feel like there are some, my experience in entrepreneurship is there are a few things that are effortless returns, but it's usually things like paid ads where the moment I stop spending money, I stop getting that return. Everything else for entrepreneurship, anything that has added value has taken work. I would say the same with my physical exercise, the same with my relationships. I haven't found any truly satisfying shortcuts. And so I think that you can apply wisdom in how you invest your time and money, but almost everything, whether it's saving for retirement, whether it is, building up muscle mass, everything takes continuous, painful investments that over time make a difference. But there's no shortcut to say like, I'm going to get 12 deals tomorrow, unless you're doing something like, turning on AdWords or something like that, in which case you probably can, but you better have the money to keep on doing that, because the moment you stop, it's going to be turned off.
Yeah. Speaking of being consistent, I think you're on like what? Some huge number of episodes, some Beyond the Uniform. I think I saw like 300 or something. How many have you done so far?
I 2 hours ago, I recorded episode 405.
So 405, and you've had like awesome guests. You've had like Jacko Willick, like folks people would recognize during that journey. What's the secret? Tell me, how are you booking these guests? How are you sticking to it? And also, what's the ROI been for you in maintaining it that long?
Yep. One of the things I love about podcasts is the access it provides. And in 405 episodes, not all of them have been great, but almost all of